Hi folks, welcome to the Let's Play of Myth: The Fallen Lords from Bungie Studios. Myth probably has the distinction of being the video game that's been most mistaken for Myst if you talk to people about it, or sometimes even if you post its name on a message board. Which is kind of funny because there actually is a little bit of a connection between the Myth series and the Myst series, which I'll try to remember to talk about later. But of course there's nothing at all similar between the games. This is a real-time tactics game. If you look in the lower left-hand corner here, you'll see that it was released in 1997. So that was after Bungie had their sort of breakout games with the Marathon series, but before they fell into the money hats with Halo and their acquisition by Microsoft. I'll want to talk a little bit about some of the other games that were released around this time, and where Myth kind of fits in on the real-time strategy, real-time tactics timeline of things, but not right now. Talking to the title screen is kind of boring. So the only other thing I want to point out while I'm here is this URL in the upper left-hand corner. That's there because I'm not playing an official Bungie patch or official Bungie version of Myth. Instead, I'm playing a patch from these guys, Project Magma, who are just some coders out in the community, fans of Myth, and I'll also talk about that a little bit more later as well. But for now, let's just go ahead and get started with the tutorial. Let's see what we need to learn about playing Myth.
This is a brief tutorial on playing Myth: The Fallen Lords. Follow the instructions or die horribly.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to pause the tutorial here just to pick up on what I was saying a minute ago about ProjectMagma.net. I'm playing Myth here in 640 by 480 and with an OpenGL renderer. The original Myth release, and to put this in context, this was the same year that GL Quake came out. So it had a software renderer and it could do 3dfx glide, I think maybe rendition, but that was it. So how am I playing an OpenGL now? Well, it's a bit of a story. In 1999, I believe, Take-Two had acquired an ownership share in Bungie. And as part of the deal that had Bungie acquired by Microsoft, Take-Two got ownership of the Myth franchise. And they used that to make Myth 3, which had some problems. They didn't really do maintenance or any exploitation of Myth 1 and Myth 2. But they were nice enough, I don't know, this was kind of surprising to me, that they gave some people in the community, in the Myth community, access to the Myth codebase in case they wanted to make patches. And so we have some people that have made patches for Myth. The main things that these Myth patches did is they fixed bugs, they added some entities so that people could make more interesting things happen on new maps, new third-party maps, and they added support for more graphics APIs. So I have OpenGL now, and that's very nice. Alright, let's go ahead and resume the tutorial and see what Mr. Narrator wants me to do.
The camera is your point of view. Moving the camera well is the first step toward playing well. Use the Q and E keys to orbit or rotate the camera.
I'm going to fast forward through this part.
Hit Tab to bring up the overhead map. See the green dot on the overhead map? That's your warrior.
Okay.
The yellow trapezoid represents your field of view.
Yeah. Okay, so we're paused again here. The overhead map. So one of the reasons I'm playing at 640 by 480, also, just to give the old school feel to things, but the overhead map doesn't scale with your resolution. So if I were to play Myth at a higher resolution, I would have a tiny, tiny overhead map, which is bad because it's nice to be able to see your friendly and enemy units here, and you can also click on the overhead map to move around. Like I think the narrator just said, this trapezoid shows our current field of view. Actually, if we were to zoom out, you notice that the trapezoid didn't change, so it's not really accurate anymore. That's because this extra level of zoom was added in the first patch for Myth. There was kind of an outcry, I guess, from the player base that the default zoom level here was too claustrophobic for playing, so Bungie patched in this extra zoom level, which we all liked quite a bit. Alright, let's pick this back up.
Select the marching warrior with the mouse and hit the spacebar to stop him.
Okay. Halt.
Now move him towards the flag by clicking near it.
This flag is something that you'll see in multiplayer games as an objective marker. So for capture the flag or territories, things like that.
Flag captured.
For right now, it's just a flag.
You may quickly select groups of units by band selecting or double-clicking on a unit. Select your archers and make them attack by clicking on the archery targets.
Zoom back out here, you'll notice the tutorial always clamps us back to the original zoom level every time it moves the camera. It's a little annoying. Anyway, here's our archery targets, and here's our archers. These guys actually aren't human if you pay attention to the myth fiction. There's some other, I guess, quasi-elvish sort of thing. But they're archers, that's the important thing. They're your artillery that has pretty good range, but not very good damage. Also not very good aim to begin with. Although, as they take care of more enemy units, they get better in status and their aim improves. But mostly you'll want to have archers in big packs so they can just kind of rain arrows on enemy units, and you'll want melee units to protect them, because if something's coming straight at the archers, they might not be able to kill it in time to protect themselves. So one thing that you really want to do with archers in particular is focus fire, so we're going to tell all the archers to attack this guy here, our little pumpkin head target. And the range that they're attacking at is determined by this height difference here. So the physics engine in Myth actually is modeling the arc of the arrow that it would need to take to hit the target. So our archers have taken care of one target, and now they're going to be picking a new target. You'll notice this guy in the end has decided this pumpkin head is closest, so he's just starting to attack this guy. So we need to refocus our fire. Take care of that guy. Come on now. And this guy. So there is some micromanagement if you really want to be efficient in Myth, especially with your ranged or other special units. Let me pause it just to say a little bit more about the terrain and the physics engine. So I mentioned that the height of the archers is affecting, their decision on how close they have to stand to have an arrow trajectory that hits the unit. The 3D terrain mesh that you see that comprises the map here is the only really true 3D object in the game. Everything else is a sprite. So if we were to zoom in real closely on this debris on the ground, you'll notice that as we turn the camera, well, it's hard to tell with this thing blocking the view, but as you turn the camera, the sprite itself doesn't turn. So this is kind of the same effect that you get with, for example, the corpses of imps in Doom. No matter which way you look, they're always facing you. So that's the drawback of having sprites in a real 3D environment. But this is kind of what you would expect from a game in this time period. As far as RTS games are concerned, I guess we had Red Alert in '96, and then Total Annihilation was in '97 also. So that was starting to bring some 3D effects into RTS games as well. There are some oddities with the way the sprites work, but you get used to it after a while. And each object represented by the sprites is modeled in 3D by the physics engine. So, things bounce around, they get tossed by explosions. They might get tossed back at you and hit one of your units, which is sad and or funny when that happens. So let's finish this guy off.
Nice going. Way to stick it to him. Now, make the dwarf attack the targets.
Okay, our dwarf. This would be our heavy artillery for the good guys, for the light side. He has a Molotov cocktail attack, which is shorter range, but it makes up for that by targeting a lot more damage. There's actually another trade-off besides the range. It can fail to go off sometimes, or bounce before it goes off. So, the dwarf is a good source of friendly fire kills at times. I think he has like a 10% dud rate, so you can't really count on him to take out a unit. You usually want to be dealing with, say, a couple of dwarfs backed up by melee units. They actually, in Myth 2, they decreased the dud rate on the dwarf Molotov cocktails. I think it's around 10% in Myth. Or was that what they decreased it to in Myth 2? I don't know. Anyway, they cranked it down to make him a more reliable unit, especially in multiplayer. So, okay. I think that removed a little bit of the charm of the dwarf. He's kind of a loose cannon, and his vocalizations and his animations and stuff all fit with that pretty well. That should take care of the last pumpkin head, I think. There was a little bit of the randomness at work there.
The dwarf also has the special ability to place satchel charges. This is useful for protecting vulnerable areas. Let's go step by step through this process. Move the dwarf close to the target.
Right, satchel charges. Basically an explosive you can drop, and then if you can find a way to detonate it, it is a magnifier on the force of the explosion. It's Yeah, I mean, when you're playing against the AI in single player, the AI is pretty dumb about dealing with satchel charges. They don't understand that they're deadly, so satchel charges are a good trap. In multiplayer, you can use them as traps as well pretty often. You can like hide them under a river or in some debris, or find some other ways to deliver them. As long as you can find a way to set them off, they can be tricky things to work with, but they're fun when they work.
Now hit T to place a satchel charge.
So we'll put one here.
Now, Control-click on the ground near the charge to blow it up.
And if a satchel charge is not underwater, and if you don't have to keep a long distance away from it, pretty much the easiest way to blow it up is just to have your dwarf ground attack nearby, and he'll get a minimum safe distance here. So just use his Molotov cocktail to set it off.
Now you can blow stuff up.
Kind of hurt himself there. So that's a dwarf for you.
The Journeyman has the special ability to heal units. Journeymen may also heal themselves.
Okay. I was expecting a little bit more voice work out of the narrator there. But anyway, so here's our Journeyman.
Yes?
Yes. He has an inventory, unlike a lot of the units, so he can carry up to, I believe 6 is the default for a normal, is the default cap for a normal Journeyman. So he can carry up to 6 of these Mandrake roots that he uses to heal friendly units with. You can also use them to disintegrate enemy undead units. Since Myth is the real-time tactics game rather than a strategy game where you build bases and generate more units, generally the units you have at the beginning of the game are all the units you're going to have for the rest of the game. The Journeyman is one way that allows you to take good care of them. Now, in a multiplayer game, you have a points budget you want to spend on units, and a Journeyman will take points, so you'll have less other units to work with. But if you're good with your Journeyman, you can make your remaining units stretch farther, so it's a trade-off. It's a tactical choice. Let's go ahead and heal this injured warrior here. This is an interruptible thing, so if someone were to attack the Journeyman, he might drop his Mandrake root. So you don't want to do it in the middle of combat. I've lost the narrator voice altogether, I think.
Assembling troops in formations is essential to keeping order in the chaos of battle. To make your units form up, select them, select a formation from 0 to 9, and click on their destination. The loose line is formation number 3. Move the warriors across the river in a loose line.
Okay, so loose line is actually not a great melee formation for attacking things with, because you want to concentrate your force. You want to take advantage of as many chances as you can to have multiple units hacking on the same enemy unit. But
your orders, sir.
For movement, it's not bad. It keeps you from getting hung up on stuff, especially if you have 2 different friendly groups trying to pass through each other.
Scattering your units is also useful when they are under attack by explosives. Select the warriors and hit B to scatter them.
Okay.
Look at him run!
So that actually is pretty useful. It's mainly kind of an oh crap last resort thing when you haven't been paying good enough attention and you all of a sudden notice that something's about to explode in the middle of your warrior formation, or any formation of friendly units. So this just allows you to try and get the hell out of Dodge and save as many of your units as you can.
Organize your warriors into a vanguard. The vanguard is formation number 9.
Vanguard looks pretty cool, but it's not actually useful for much. But we'll be obedient here.
Well done. Now, make the warriors attack the targets.
Attacking the targets will end the tutorial, so before I do that, I'm going to say a little bit more about formations. Formations was one of the other things that kind of made Myth unique when it was released. So you had the camera controls, the real-time tactics aspect rather than any base building or resource collecting. And you have formations. Most of the formations are actually useful in the course of the game, which is different than a lot of other games. I think there was a game called Shadow of the Horned Rat, maybe in '95, that used formations.
Engage!
I'm not real familiar with it. I think I just played around with the demo a bit at the time. It seemed like you really only dealt with units at a squad level, so you couldn't deal with individual units. So, formations are not a brand new thing that Myth introduced, but like a lot of Bungie games, It's one of the newish things that they took and put together in a nice combination. You'll notice that if I pick a formation, I'm going to do the short line here, it doesn't really say anything about how my guys are going to arrange themselves when traveling to get there. It just indicates how they need to end up. So if you want your guys to actually maintain a certain spacing from each other while moving, you really need to set them up in a formation to begin with, and then tell them to have that same formation maybe at the destination, and they'll vaguely keep to the same spacing. Obviously, there's some passability data on the terrain that will get them messed up, so yeah, you can't really move in formation very well. What you want to do is to be able to end up at a spot in formation, to defend that spot, or to attack something that's nearby. And the loose line, really, this is not a good formation for melee, like I mentioned earlier. It is a pretty good formation for things like archers, but for warriors, you usually want a short or a long line that has close spacing. Oh yeah, one other thing I wanted to talk about. So, along with being able to pick the formation that you're going to end up in, you can also pick which way it's going to face. Actually, you need to do that most of the time. Rather than just clicking at the destination, you can flick your mouse in the destination that the formation needs to face. So I can make it face left. Whoops. Or maybe I can't. There we go. I didn't have a formation selected. But anyway, yes, so there I made the formation face left. Let's pick Vanguard so it'll be more obvious which way it's pointing. Actually, I've finally found a use for Vanguard. So let's make Vanguard face right over here. Or we could put them in a Vanguard formation that's pointing at the flag. If the flag doesn't get in my way.
Yes.
And this was, along with the camera controls, this was another thing that people had some difficulty getting used to, this whole idea of gesture flicking, which I think may have been unfortunately influenced a little bit too much by the fact that this was a cross-platform game, so it had to work on the Mac. And I love the Mac. I'm not making any jokes, haha, one-button mouse. But the fact is that the usual mouse for the Mac at that time was one button, and so they had to figure out control schemes that worked well with the one-button mouse. And so the gesture flicking to pick your unit facing was, I think, one of the accommodations for that. Yeah, you'll notice an example of the wonderful myth pathfinding at work here. It's actually not too bad a lot of times, except when dealing with friendly units that might be in your way. So this guy is obviously wanting to get here, but he hasn't really figured out how to do that. I just had to help him out a little bit. Okay, that may be enough talking for the tutorial, so let's go over here and kill these pumpkin heads that we're supposed to get rid of. You'll notice that the warriors will go through the pumpkin heads a lot faster than the archers. The warriors are really your bread and butter melee unit. They've got pretty good speed. They've got pretty good attack. Because they have their shields, they can actually block some incoming melee attacks as well. So it's good to have warriors in almost any situation, especially to protect your ranged units.
And stay down.
Okay, let's go on across the river and mess these guys up.
We're on it.
At the end here, you'll see a little victory cheer from the warriors. That's actually their unit taunt. You have a taunt that you can trigger for every unit in the game.
All right, you finished the tutorial. Good luck. You're gonna need it.
Yay! Alright, it's time to start a new game.